Champaign County Agriculture Today with your host, Dennis Riggs.
Hello and welcome to Champaign County Agriculture Today. My name is Dennis Riggs and I'm glad you tuned in today, and I think you're going to find some very good, useful information on our program today about something you enjoy 3 times a day, and that would be food. That's right. On our agricultural program, of course, the end result of what farmers do out there in the fields and what they do in their livestock herds is to produce the most safe and abundant food supply in the world, and we are part of that as consumers as well. So if you like food, stay tuned because we have a very interesting program for you today. We have 2 guests on our program today that's going to give us all kinds of information. We have Robin and Jim with us today. Glad to have you folks with us. Let's do a quick update of who you are, where you're from. Robin, give us a quick background of where you're at and what you're doing these days.
Thanks, Dennis. I'm at the University of Illinois Extension, and I coordinate all our nutrition education programs, and we very clearly tell people that the food, when I go to Washington, I always say, you know, food is what people eat, and our farmers grow this food, and that's why agriculture is important.
Thank you very much for what you do over at the University of Illinois. Jim, I know you help out the Illinois Farm Bureau in several different areas.
Sure.
Give us your position over there with the Farm Bureau.
I work as their livestock program director and also manage the Illinois Milk Producers Association. So any of the livestock issues fall into my lap.
Very good. Well, I know you've got a good background from the farm.
Yes.
Years back, right?
Yeah.
You ever get back to the farm every once in a while?
Oh yeah, we sure do, and my wife and I have a farming interest at home today, and so our kids know what it's like to feed cattle and bale hay when it's 100 degrees outside, that sort of thing.
Okay, well, it's glad you've got that work ethic built into that. I know you always have. Robin, how about your background? Where's hometown for you, and where'd you grow up at?
I grew up all over the country. My father was an athletic coach, and we moved a lot.
I think it gives you a big perspective.
It gives you a huge perspective, and we always lived in university communities, and it was very interesting and very exciting. And my major, I always noticed crops growing, but my major interest is around nutrition and how we translate what people eat from where it comes from and how good it is for them in their long-term health.
Let's just get started right there. Right now, we in America, one of the many things we're blessed with is an abundant food supply. We go to our grocery stores, we go to our convenience foods, we go to our restaurants and wherever food service areas. We have a pretty good supply of food. Why is that, Robin?
Because we have incredible systems in this country that make sure that food gets produced and that food gets packaged and that food gets, and we have a tremendous grocery store system and food distribution system. We have a lot of places where there aren't a lot, where people, it's a struggle for people to get to grocery stores. We call those food deserts, and they're in lots of places. We're in Champaign County, we're very fortunate. We have lots of grocery stores, and it's easy to get to food, but we have very good systems, and systems make a huge difference in how we get food.
Compare the United States with other countries around the world. Are we in the middle? Are we on top as far as a secure food supply?
Actually, I think we're always near the top because we have something in our we have regulations called HACCP, which looks at critical control points and how we produce food and make sure that food gets to markets in a safe fashion. And we've seen a lot of changes in that lately because we have those kind of controls for the systems that we have, but we're seeing a whole new food supply come in that we're interested in with increasing fruits and vegetables, and that's where we're seeing a lot of our new interest in food that is less than safe, and that's because we don't have those controls yet in those places. And as we get those, our food will get safer. Our food is set up to always become safer.
Let's talk about the food supply that we've got. Let's go to the farm. Jim, I know that with your farming interest, you know where food begins out there. Our people watching today hopefully understand from our programs that food truly does begin on the farm. Let's talk about what the American farmer is doing to make the food that he grows, he and she grow out there on the farm. How can they make it safe?
Well, let's use a dairy farmer as an example. Dairy farms have programs that they work with their veterinarian on to make sure that the milk that they produce is a very safe product. And when they have to treat their cows with antibiotics, they have to recognize withdrawal times so that that milk never gets into the system. Once that milk is marketed and produced and goes off the farm, the trucker that takes that milk off the farm takes a sample of the milk before it's loaded onto the truck, When it gets back to the plant, they take another sample of milk from the milk that's commingled from other farmers on that truck. And every step of the way, it's checked for antibiotics, perhaps bacteria, all these different critical control points in the processing of milk. Then it's pasteurized, homogenized, again tested throughout many different steps in the process, and then ultimately goes safe to the consumer. Livestock producers, very similar. In other words, if they treat an animal with an antibiotic, those animals are not able to be marketed until a certain withdrawal time passes to work that antibiotic out of the system, so the consumer can be assured that meat and milk products that reach their table are free of antibiotics and free from other products that definitely they would not want to have into their systems.
Jim, how do we equate, when we're not feeling good, we go to the doctor and find out what's wrong and hopefully have it treated. Do farmers do the same type of thing with their animals?
Yeah, we just don't give antibiotics to the entire herd just as a routine practice. For one thing, it's very expensive, and two, you're needlessly giving antibiotics to animals that really don't need it. So they're just treated on an individual basis, or perhaps in a group situation if a whole group or pen is coughing and has a cold like maybe we would have today as a human, for example. We would seek treatment, and that's what we do as livestock producers, consult with a veterinarian and get a prescription and make sure that those animals get treated properly.
I'm just drawing an analogy here of a room full of preschool kids that are in a daycare setting, and everybody's got a runny nose, and a pen of animals over here, and everybody's got a runny nose. Kind of the same similarity of proximity that would cause the sniffles to be transmitted from one to another, right?
Oh, definitely. Nose-to-nose contact is a very common way to transmit diseases, and so we're very cautious of that. And we compartmentalize in livestock production, where we might have separate buildings or separate stages of production to try to isolate diseases and reduce the risk of transmission from one production system to another.
And I know Robin is sitting there saying, if the cows would just wash their hooves.
Absolutely, but their hooves don't go to their nose. That's what we have with children. Their hooves go to their nose, and they need those hands washed.
There you go. That's the big prevention right there.
The biggest thing you can do is wash your hands, and we thankfully live in Illinois, and it's 20 seconds instead of 30. But people don't understand how to wash their hands, and you just need soap and water, and then you need to dry them, and then you need, when you pick your nose again, you need to go wash them again.
And you need to do that, not just think about it or say it. It needs to actually be done.
Absolutely.
Well, Jim, you brought some technology along with you today, and I can't pass this opportunity up. Taking temperatures of those who are sick. We've all done it, our own families. You have a device here that allows farmers to take the temperature of their animals actually out in the field. Share with us that.
This product here is a real-time, constantly monitors an animal's temperature, and this would be for cattle. It's a new product on the market, still being tested, but shows a lot of promise. And what it simply does is attaches to the animal's ear, like so, and this probe would go down the ear canal and constantly monitor the animal's core temperature. It's not a true body core temperature, but it is a pretty accurate way of measuring an animal's temperature. And what you'll see is spikes throughout the day, but if there's continued spikes, perhaps the animal is in heat and ready to be bred, or calving, or sick. Mm-hmm. And it will give you a good opportunity to check that animal more closely, find that animal, and treat her before she becomes showing clinical signs of sickness. So
an excellent example how agriculture takes a proactive and goes out on the offense using technology to help them do a better job of the farming.
And this is all just transmitted from an FM antenna right locally to your farm, and then downloaded on the internet, and it'll come up with little red flags or alerts to say, this animal number 48 needs to be checked out. So
And the little iPod in there that also plays the music to soothe
Keeps
the
them
animal?
cool.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
I'm just kidding. That really
What are
is.
they listening to?
Yeah, what are cows listening to these days? I don't know. We won't even go there.
Old MacDonald had a farm.
That's a
probably.
perfect one. I like that one. Let's talk about the food supply. Our consumers are watching us today. Our concern when they go to the grocery store is where does our food come from? And it's a cool idea because it's called COOL, country of origin. Jim, you brought along some great show and tell today. I want to go to that. And what we have here is a picture of, we actually have the true meat on our camera over here. I want you to explain what we're looking at on that
Sure.
label to get an idea of what the consumer's buying.
And consumers are just starting to see this out in the grocery stores today, but it's country of origin labeling effective in the middle of March. And it was originally started in 2002 Farm Bill, then ultimately in the 2008 Farm Bill it was funded. But we're starting to see, and here's an example of some boneless pork ribs, and you'll see that this has a label on it that says product of U.S. and Canada. Now, pork, we have a lot of Canadian product that comes into the United States, but they come in as little tiny feeder pigs and then fed out in the United States. So this product here is from the U.S. and Canada. Originally, the country of origin labeling laws said that you had to say that this was, for example, born in Canada and then raised in the U.S. and processed in the U.S. And through the comment period, it became very clear that that would be a very burdensome and onerous task to do all that type of documentation to ensure that that product has the proper paper trail, if you will. So we've come to this, and that's a little bit broader definition. And so you'll just see something very general that says product of U.S. and Canada on that.
We're going to switch right now, and we're going to bring in another cut of meat, and this is one that does not have such a clear label of a U.S. origin. We've got ground beef. We've actually got two packages here. This is our first package, and tell us what the label says on this one.
Now, I bought these right next to each other in the meats case. Both 85% lean ground beef. And what I noticed was this one says product of U.S., Canada, and Mexico. And the way the label reads and the way the regulations have been promulgated, that if a product is processed in a plant that accepts meat from U.S., Canada, and Mexico, and for a certain period of time, you can't guarantee that there might be, especially in hamburger, product from any of those countries. So the label will be, again, very broad. So I can tell that this is a plant that accepts meat, beef that turns into meat, is processed into meat, from many different countries. So it might be feeder cattle from Canada, feeder cattle from Mexico, but ultimately raised and processed in the U.S.
Now let's go ahead and pull that one, and this is the other package of hamburger that was right next to the package of hamburger we just showed,
Yeah.
and the label's a little bit different here.
And this simply says U.S. And again, it's product that looks exactly the same. It's substantially, exactly no difference. In other words, 85% lean ground hamburger. But what you'll see the difference is, and this is what I call the grand experiment, is that this product is a little bit more expensive. It's 12 cents a pound more expensive, but it's entirely U.S. product. So will the consumer pay more money for a U.S. product? Like I said, it's a grand experiment. We're seeing it right now, and I'm sure somebody is writing a thesis today about country of origin labeling and consumer preferences.
Well, let's switch over to Robin for just a second. What have you found in your research and talking to consumers and working with proper preparation of food products about country of origin? Is it important or is it not?
Depends on your audience. You know, we have a huge increase in local food interest, and people say they're very interested in where their food comes from. And I teach a class in this on campus. And I ask them the first day, what's local food? And they say pizza. And I say, really? Explain that. Comes to the door. And so people have various definitions of what is local. And when they find out, students are, I'm stunned, don't know anything about farmers markets, don't know about, and when they learn about country of origin, they start to pay attention. And I think the general consumer will be the same. They'll pay attention during this grand experiment. And as they become more and more aware of it, they'll develop a consciousness about country of origin labeling, and they'll make decisions. Some very clearly want to know that it's U.S. food. Some very clearly don't care. And I would suggest that the vast majority of consumers today are interested in price, and they're interested in appearance. And labeling, they get more sophisticated every year in labels, but we find a way to put so much information on labels that marketers go crazy because they know that people dump information.
And thus consumers glass over and they look past all of the great information that's on there and maybe just check the price or.
And they sometimes need glasses to see it.
Yeah.
Or magnifying glass. And until we have little magnifying glasses in the grocery store, everyone won't be able to read all these things.
That's interesting. Well, let's talk about what farmers in America are doing to do this. It seems like, as we talked before, Jim, that monitoring, taking a proactive stance on testing is important. We have a picture here we're going to bring up, and this is going to talk about a cow. We've got a cow here, and it's getting an ear tag placed in it right there. Tell us what's going on there that helps us understand where our food comes from.
And this was a project that we were working on with the Livingston County Fair. We did this at 3 different county fairs where we tagged animals and their weigh-ins in February, and then we read them in with an electronic reader, and we did that earlier, right before the fair. And what we wanted to do was to see how easy it was. Was it difficult? What were some of the fallbacks? What were some of the problems we saw?
And you've got those items right here with you.
And it's just a simple electronic reader that reads a RFID chip, a radio frequency ID chip, just much like this one. It's placed in the ear of the animal, and it has a 15-digit number on it that's unique to that animal.
It's like a VIN number for an animal. It's like a car has a VIN number.
Exactly, or a social security number for you or you and I. And this also is a program that's part of a national animal identification system. It's a voluntary program, and our Illinois Farm Bureau is very supportive of a voluntary program. And so we are encouraging people to register their premises and look at considering using systems like this that help identify animals through the system and help when a disease event occurs, be able to quickly respond to it so that it doesn't spread to other animals, other farms, which really impact the economic livelihood of a producer.
All these items I can see can help out the consumer confidence. But truly, Jim, as a farmer, there is no profitability in a farmer growing diseased animals or having sick animals or crops, is there?
No, absolutely not. For example, the one case, the very first case of BSE that we had in 2003, we still haven't recovered to this day. We're still not at our beef exports of 2003. We're about 94%. We're almost there, but it's been taking us all that time to get back to those levels. And our beef exports are very lucrative for a producer, and without those, the industry has seen something like a $13–14 billion loss. So when we look at systems like this to help aid in the response and the security of our food, it really, we can see very quickly that the benefits do outweigh the costs of a system.
A newsworthy item that just recently has been in the news and has been controlled is the H1N1 virus. Some refer to it as a swine flu. I'm still not sure where they got that name, quite frankly. How has that affected producers? What effect has that had on the economics of agriculture?
Swine producers were already experiencing about 18 months of losses, so it really was the knockout punch for some producers, unfortunately. What we saw in just 7 market days' time, we saw about a 20% reduction in market price of a hog. And unfortunately, we saw a lot of media attention to this. which is a good thing from a human health standpoint, but unfortunately they kept showing this background tape of hogs out in a little lot or in a pen, and it was unfortunate because, you know, they kept calling it swine flu, and really a more proper term would be North American flu or a hybrid flu, but certainly not swine flu. This is a flu that has many different parts, and it's a completely new influenza strain, and that's what has brought such concern to human health populations. Although what's nice about it is it's not as virulent as we originally thought. Mm-hmm. So,
well, Robin, I know you do a lot of work in prevention and monitoring and of course dealing with the problem once it shows up. Events like the H1N1 and those types of epidemics, what do you tell people? What can they do?
Actually, public health has very, very, very tight systems for managing disease, and we have been prepared for some kind of pandemic for quite a while now, and they've been doing a lot of practice, and they have systems in place. And what the individual consumer can do is wash their hands and keep their food supply safe, and don't cough and sneeze on people. And when people are sick, don't, you know, it's not time to be close to them. And we can pretty much control communicable disease. And we know that if you simply wash your hands regularly, you can prevent most of the things you would get, which is kind of scary, because we keep track of who washes their hands in our building, and some people we don't go near.
Oh, that's scary. Okay. Well, my mom always told me to do that, so I've tried. Well, what about food preparation? Sometimes that kind of leaves a hole.
When you come in, most of the food, the major food is, its least safe point is once it gets in your car on the way home from the grocery store. And if you should get home quickly. And if you can't, you should have a cooler in your car for cold food. And if you don't have a cooler, you should have a box lined with paper. And you should keep food, you should try to maintain the temperatures of the food that they are in the grocery store. Then you get them home and get them into your refrigerator, store them properly. Make sure your countertops are clean. Make sure that you keep things clean in your kitchen. Wash your hands before you do it. And then whenever you're doing food preparation, follow the food safety things. Clean your space and your hands and everything you're going to work with. Make sure you separate foods, so if you're going to cook meat and protein products, you keep them separate from vegetables and bread, and everything has, you know, now you can get cutting boards for next to nothing, and you can have a different color cutting board for each kind of food you do. And keep your areas clean in between. Don't leave everything on the counter. And then you cook foods to the proper temperature. And the proper temperature came down a couple years because we frankly got tired of eating really dry chicken breasts.
Made a difference.
165 degrees is done. And you know, I get questions from people about pork a lot, and I say, you know, we haven't fed pork garbage in this country since before the 1940s. We haven't had these diseases that our parents terrified us about. But cook food properly and don't overcook it, or you won't like it. And then chill it within 2 hours of when you eat it. Put it back in the refrigerator. People say, oh, I should let it cool off. No, put it in the fridge. Put it in smaller containers in the fridge and get it cooled down quickly. Because you want to keep it out of the range of 40 to 140 degrees, which is where microorganisms grow best.
Is there a difference between using microwaves for warming up food and using the old conventional ovens?
Sure.
And is it a good thing or is it a bad thing?
Depends on what you do.
Okay, all right.
If all you have is a microwave, it's a good thing.
Okay, it's better than definitely better than nothing.
The thing that you have to know about a microwave is microwaves get hot spots, and even the newest technologies of them. So you need to make sure you stir the food regularly and you get a uniform temperature across the microwave.
So just don't put it in there and heat it up one time and think you're done. A little stirring is good.
You have to pay attention.
Yeah.
Yeah, but most microwaves are only used for reheating. So
that's true.
So people or popcorn.
That's always a good thing. All right. Or throwing out ice cream sometimes.
Yeah, throwing out ice cream.
Oh yeah, when you want it,
goodness.
go, you got to eat it quick. One topic I wanted to hit, and we got Jim here, I want to make sure is genetically modified organisms. You hear about in the news a lot, GMOs. Jim, has the excitement around those kind of waned down a little bit? Are people more acceptable to genetically modified organisms from the farm?
Yeah, it's especially really increased productivity because of use of genetically modified organisms, whether it's developing new types of insect-resistant corn or herbicide-tolerant corn, soybeans. And then it even extends to livestock too, because some of the products we're able to use on dairy cattle that really reduce the carbon footprint of agriculture, and we're responding to consumers asking for fewer crop protection products used on crops, or making livestock more efficient. So one thing people have to realize is that the price of products, Dennis, like that you have received for your product, is pretty much the same price we've received for many, many years, and it's efficiencies that have made farmers profitable over the years. And so biotechnology is certainly one of those tools that have helped us become more efficient and profitable.
As the farmer draws from his bag of tricks to do his job and her job of producing an abundant food supply, we've seen how technology has been a part of it, but also the genetically modified organisms in biotechnology. Do you think this is a trend that's going to continue? Have we peaked out?
It's really all about education, to make sure the consumer understands this. It's a very safe process. It just speeds along something we've done in many, many years, and that's, hybrid seed corn, for example, with selective breeding. And what we've done is just speed that process and be a little bit more, laser focused by being able to develop these products. And
here's the good news. I just told our crew that we're going to look at slide number 2,
okay,
because slide number 2 is the end result for our consumers who are watching us today of why this is good for the consumer. Look at this. Persons fed per farmer. This goes back to the 1940s and, of course, goes up to 2007. I'd say that's a definite trend. What do you think?
Yeah, we're feeding about 152 people per person or per farmer today. And again, those efficiencies are unbelievable. In Illinois, again, going back to the dairy industry, we're produce pretty much the same amount of milk for many, many years, but we're doing it with fewer and fewer cows all the time.
And Robin, let's wrap things up with you. We're getting to the end of our program here. Consumers, should they be worried about food when they go down the grocery store shelves? What's your tip for them as they're shopping for the food supply for their family?
Generally, when people go into the grocery store, they're very interested in, if they have a list, they have their own plan. If they don't, they buy food based on price and based on how hungry they are. And we suggest you don't be hungry. Go in the grocery store, get yourself a good supply of food, pay attention to price, and then pay very close attention to it's your responsibility to keep it safe once it leaves the grocery store.
As far as resources out there, what resources from the university can consumers tap into to get more information about this?
Well, we have extension offices in every county that answer all kinds of food safety questions. We're now moving into the summer where we have a lot of food preservation questions coming, and we answer all of those questions constantly. We also have websites, and the university websites have very good, credible information. And I suggest, as Jim has said, that education is going to be our way, that we're going to, the better educated our populace is, the better things are.
That's the whole idea. Jim, how about farmers? Are they continuing to learn too as they move on each day?
Oh, it's unbelievable to see a planter today using GPS marking where they don't even have to use mechanical field markers to see where they've been. They're using
tremendous.
satellite. It's almost like a computer tech wizard right there in the cab of your tractor today.
Thank you so much for being with us today, and thank you folks for listening. That's our time. See you next time on Champaign County Agriculture Today.
Champaign County Agriculture Today is brought to you by Champaign County Farm Bureau.